like to call this meeting to order. Good afternoon. I will now call the meeting to order on the March 24th Committee of the Whole meeting. Item B, the declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from Council? Seeing none, I will move to item C, and that is the land acknowledgement statement. The town of East Gwillimbury recognizes and acknowledges the lands originally used and occupied by the First Peoples of the Williams Treaty First Nation and other Indigenous peoples, and on behalf of Council, I thank them for sharing this land. We also acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as East Gwillimbury's closest First Nation community and recognize the unique relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and the waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and we join them in these responsibilities. Item D is our community announcements, and are there any community announcements? Councillor, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to say what a terrific pancake breakfast that the Mount Albert Lions hosted this past Saturday, and we always are appreciative of their contributions to the community. And I wanted to announce and make sure that everybody knows about the Older Adults Program open house that is going on this Saturday, March the 28th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Health and Active Living Plaza. This free event will showcase the various programs and services available to older adults in East Gwillimbury. There'll be information booths, there'll be free drop-in programs, as well as snacks and refreshments. So we look forward to that on Saturday.
Thank you very much. Are there any other announcements at this time? Not seeing many, I will move down to item E. In accordance with section 13.2 of our procedural bylaw, I am seeking consent from Council to hear from the deputants included on today's agenda.
Yes.
Pardon? I have a mover, Councillor. Go ahead. Thank you. And seconder? Okay, then we will. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Before we begin hearing from deputants, I'd like to outline expectations for conduct at this meeting. All participants are expected to conduct themselves respectfully and in accordance with the town's procedural bylaw. Disruptive behavior, including interruptions or inappropriate language, will not be tolerated. Each deputant will have up to 5 minutes to speak unless otherwise approved, and they must limit their remarks to the subject for which they have been granted approval. As a reminder, deputants shall not speak disrespectfully of any person, use offensive or unparliamentary language, speak on matters outside their approved topic, or disobey the rules of the procedure or a decision of the chair. If there is disorder or a breach of these rules, I may curtail a deputation or rule it concluded, and individuals may be asked to leave. We will now proceed. And we are at item number 1. M. Sage, on behalf of the York Region Food Council, making a deputation to committee regarding G1, Joint Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee and Environmental Advisory Committee Report, DIAC 2026-02, York Region Food Charter.
Excellent. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of Council. I am Morgan Sage. I'm here on behalf of the York Region Food Council to seek endorsement for the York Region Food Charter. So next slide. The York Region Food Council is an initiative of York Region Food Network, a food security nonprofit that connects and empowers people to access healthy food through education and advocacy. The Food Council itself is a multidisciplinary collaboration of food system actors that work together to create and support initiatives that foster food security and community development. We work towards our vision, which is up on the screen, through collective advocacy initiatives, including updating the York Region Food Charter. Next slide. So what is a food charter? It is a statement of values and directions to guide food and agriculture policy and action. They really act as a basis for coordinating efforts. The York Region Food Network published the original York Region Food Charter in 2013, and then about a decade later, we were like, this maybe needs to be updated a little bit. So one of the most notable and exciting outcomes of the original food charter was the formation of the York Region Food Council in 2018 and our subsequent working groups. Next slide, please. So when we updated the food charter, we followed a thorough process and consulted with nearly 300 community and sector voices. The food charter was completed in December of 2024, and we're currently seeking endorsement from each of York Region's municipalities. Next slide, please. At its core, the York Region Food Charter is a collective set of values and a vision for our local food system that provides guidance for food and for food-related policies and actions. These values are broken down into 6 key pillars, and the pillars are equity, social justice, and food security, health and well-being, the local agri-food sector, next slide please, environmental stewardship, knowledge and sharing, and community and culture. You can see on your screen that each pillar has a value statement associated with it. In addition to that, the full charter, which you would have received, has additional statements that expand on that collective vision that I've been talking about. Next slide, please. While we were updating the food charter, one of the things we kept hearing from community and sector folks alike was we want something that's actionable. So not only did we create a food charter, we created an optional toolkit, which we labeled action, or we called action document. So this here on the screen is just the first page, but each of the values in the charter has several actions associated with it. This document is a tool not only for our food council, but also for governments and organizations who endorse the food charter so that they can identify how their work can and already does contribute to advancing the food charter. Next slide, please. Already, the York Region Food Charter aligns with policies both at the regional level and municipal levels. So at the regional level, the charter aligns with the 2022 official plan, the community safety and well-being plans, the climate change action plan, the agriculture and agri-food strategy, and the smart living plan. Next slide, please. In East Gwillimbury, again, your policies are already aligned with what's in the food charter. Your official and strategic plans emphasize sustainability, community, and environment. Those are further expanded upon in other policies like the environmental strategy and the IIDEA action plan. Also, you have a community garden policy that's in the works, which will provide land for residents to grow food and connect not only with land, but with other people as well. You also have great initiatives happening here. For instance, the library not only has a food pantry, but they received new funding to include cooking classes and a seed library. And one of the things that I have really enjoyed about connecting with East Gwillimbury staff is seeing the collaboration that's already happening between departments. It has been phenomenal to see how their efforts are trying to make the community stronger. Next slide, please. So what does it mean to endorse the food charter? Endorsement would mean recognizing that agriculture and food is central to complete and healthy communities. It also means you're committed to advancing the vision laid out within the charter, and as I already pointed out, you're already doing that. You're already taking actions to advance that vision. When you endorse the charter, you'll also be joining Aurora, King, Georgina, Richmond Hill, Vaughan, and Newmarket in your support. So, the town of East Gwillimbury, as I said, has already been supportive of food and sustainability initiatives, so we are here today asking you to continue this great work by endorsing the 2024 Food Charter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Leahy, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Mayor. I have a question for Ms. Sage. Thank you very much for your presentation, and it's a pleasure to meet you today. You mentioned that the York Region Food Council was started in 2018.
Yes.
And so could you just tell us a little bit more about that? Is it a volunteer organization, or are you employees of York Region? Could you clarify for us? Thank you.
So the The York Region Food Council, we are housed under a nonprofit called York Region Food Network, which our offices are only 7 minutes south of here. So it was a nice little drive. If anyone ever wants to come visit, I'm looking to my executive director, and she has her eyes closed, but it's okay. Anyways, so the council is made up. It's volunteer positions. There's a bunch of people from across the food sector. So there are people who are in academia. There's some people from municipalities, like sustainability departments, for instance. There's some folks from the region and economic development. We have community members. We just have a representation of all sorts of individuals whose work or livelihoods or even just their passions align with, just creating a stronger food system. Yeah, hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. And if I have one more follow-up question because
Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Mayor. I read your food charter action document, which is comprehensive, and one of the items, and you have check marks in the boxes, so
Yes.
I'm trying to understand how this is all laid out. And the fifth item, under equity, social justice, and food security, it says, empower people with lived experience of food insecurity and poverty to create systems change through peer advocacy while offering the appropriate support and infrastructure such as peer networks and compensation. And so I see that there's some check marks in some of the boxes, but not under municipal government. So could you tell us a little bit more about this compensation that's referred to and where that money is coming from?
Yes, so this is something that, when talking about advocacy and advocating for people who are food insecure, it's one of those things where you don't want to advocate for without actually having the voices of those who have lived experience involved in that advocacy. So the idea behind that action is to have, to make sure we involve people with lived experience, again, in that advocacy. And all of this work takes a lot of time and energy, and to assume that people can just easily volunteer their time when they're already food insecure and low income, it's kind of bold to assume that, because, for instance, I do this advocacy work full time and I get paid a decent wage for that. So to expect people just to volunteer their time and efforts to that it's valuable work that we want to make sure is compensated. So what we've been doing, as we apply for funding as a nonprofit, we'll work that into our funding ask to have like honorariums or stipends for people with lived experience, for instance. And just coming back to the action document itself, it's one of those things that there might be check marks or not check marks in certain boxes. This is just recommendations. Honestly, as a municipality, you might look at that action document and say, maybe that's something you want to take on, and there's no check box or there's no check mark under municipalities. But that doesn't mean that we're discouraging municipalities from doing that, or we don't recommend you do that. It was just one of those things that we weren't necessarily sure how that would look for a municipality, or how it would look for us to say municipalities should be doing that, when we felt that it was sort of on us or on the charitable sector to sort of bring advocacy forward to municipalities, the region, and higher levels of government as well. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Councillor Crothers, go ahead, please.
Thank you so much for the presentation and for the work you're doing on this. It's so important. I think what I really liked about this presentation and reading it before you came in is how much it aligns with what we're already doing. And that's so important, that we're not going off this way and that way, that we are sticking with the policies, the official plan, strategic plan, thinking green, on and on and on, all the different things that we're already doing, and this aligns directly with that. I know we have a couple of things that are in progress, but for me it's about what are the next steps. So I agree that we should endorse the framework, and it's sort of a foundational piece for a lot of the work that's already happening. But where do you see East Gwillimbury's next steps need to be?
Well, obviously endorsing the food charter, but also One of the things that we see as the Food Council moving forward with this document in particular is we want to build a relationship with East Gwillimbury, with your staff members. And already with this joint report that came in, I've been in contact with some of your staff members, and I just see that as a relationship that will continue to build, and we can continue to work with you and like have a sort of back and forth relationship. We want to be able to support you if your staff see that you can take on some of those actions. We want to be able to support with that and encourage that. So honestly, I think the next steps would be, again, building that relationship, endorsing, building a relationship, and then identifying where you can, push things a little bit further with some of your policies. And again, you already have great people on staff who are already doing a lot of that work. So I just want to be there and be a part of those conversations and build those relationships with those folks.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I understand there was extensive consultation and collaboration with Georgina Island First Nation as well. So I think that's really important. And what you're talking about lived experience, I think is so important. I occasionally get calls from members of the community who want to see us doing more for the food bank, for instance. And I think we need to work with the people who are experiencing food insecurity to find out what is it that they need. And I'm very excited that tomorrow they're expanding the food pantry to an extra dry goods day. So we're already doing so much, but let's find out from those who have the experience, what is it that they need, rather than us always telling them what we think they need. So Thank you for that, and I'm very happy that you've brought this forward. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Could I have a mover, please? Councillor, go ahead. Be it resolved that the deputation made by M. Sage on behalf of York Region Food Council regarding item G1, joint diversity and inclusion adversary Committee and Environmental Advisory Committee Report DIAC 2026-02, York Region Food Charter be received. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
We are at item F, and that is a presentation, but there are no presentations at this time. And I will move to item G, council committees, boards, and groups. That's under G1, Joint Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee and Environmental Advisory Committee Report. And that's from York Region Food Charter. Yes, go ahead, please.
So this is a report from two of our advisory committees asking that we endorse the charter. So there's a motion to receive, and then the committee's recommending a motion that the York Region Food Charter be approved by the town of East Gwillimbury, and I'm happy to move that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Leahy?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, I have a couple of questions with regard to the report that was prepared by the joint report by the Diversity, Inclusion and Inclusion Advisory Committee and the Environmental Advisory Committee that we have been provided in advance of voting on it. So,
you have questions?
Yes, I do
Go
have
ahead,
a couple
please.
of questions. My first question is with regard to, on page 1, there is some language that I would like clarified. What is the meaning of the phrase here? It talks about recommending that the town of East Gwillimbury adopt the York Region Food Charter to help address food security, the current cost of living crisis, and oppressive components of the York Region food system. I'm wondering if a staff member might be able to elaborate on what those oppressive components are that is being referred to.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor. There's a number of components that actually link to our IDEA action plan. And many of those areas speak to the challenges that we have in terms of having a better understanding and knowledge and foothold on Indigenous rights. So it speaks to harvesting rights that Indigenous individuals have and for which there has not been a lot of action, and there since has actually been a lot of communication and conversation with staff on that, so Indigenous ways of knowing in food systems. So that's one example. But we also have just some generally broad understanding and knowing of socioeconomic differences within communities. And so this will certainly be able to highlight some of those challenges that individuals in certain socioeconomic areas face.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. So there's some other terminology that I also would like to have some clarification on. What is the definition on page 2 when it refers to food justice? What is the definition of food justice?
So through you, Madam Mayor, food justice addresses the inequities that I actually spoke about. So not everybody has equal access to food due to socioeconomic conditions, and so this speaks to that.
You're satisfied?
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciated the clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johns, I think you, I've seen your hand up right away.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to lend my support to this. I think that, you know, with the deputation, her speaking about the progress that the municipality has made, one of the items for us to focus on in the future and to make happen is our community gardens. I am a big champion of the idea to progress the community gardens, the opportunity for us to really, this is about bringing the community together and learning and getting our hands dirty with one another, and it's an opportunity to grow together. And I think that this resolution, along with the support of the York Region Food Charter, will just help underpin the opportunity for us to continue to move forward and champion the community garden. So I'm in favor of this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm happy to support this. Our work, especially with respect to community gardens, predates this council. In fact, there's a resolution from some time ago where we directed staff to find locations to implement them. There's one actually at our ops center, and I believe there was even some planting done here at the Civic Center. So this is just, as Councillor John said, a really good way to amplify the work that we've already done. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to give the opportunity to perhaps General Manager Aaron Carmazan, if he has anything to say about the Health and Active Living Plaza, because it's my understanding that at the new Health and Active Living Plaza, there's actually a vegetable garden being prepared there as well. Would he be able to provide a few more details about that?
We hope so. Go ahead, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, we do have a community garden that would be dedicated to growing food at the Health and Active Living Plaza. It's a demonstration garden, and that's been in the plans with the concept design and the detailed design and now construction, and that's anticipated for completion at the end of June. And we're also bringing back a memorandum to council to keep council and the public informed. We're working with our environmental staff, as well as the library staff, as well as engaged EG volunteers to use the gardens as a demonstration site and an educational site with regards to food security, and as well as how to grow your own vegetables and food.
Thank you. Other questions? I'm not seeing any at this time. I have a mover, Councillor Carruthers. Be it resolved that Joint Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee and Environmental Advisory Committee report DIAC 2026-02 dated March 24th, 2026, entitled York Region Food Charter be received, and that Council adopt the York Region Food Charter for the town of East Gwillimbury. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. We're on item H, Legal and Legislative Services, with myself in the chair. And I believe General Manager Ingram was wanting to say a few words. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. The report before you is with respect to the York Region Municipalities Insurance Pool Program. We have Ryan Durrell of ACKNOWLEDGEMENT Insurance Services here to present to you. Before I introduce Mr. Durrell, I'd like to take a moment to first acknowledge that Warren Marshall, our CFO, and Janet Gates, our law clerk in legal services, have been instrumental in putting together this report that's before you, and I thank them for that. The initiative has been overseen by our CAO, Mark Valchik, who unfortunately isn't here today to join us. Before I turn over the floor to Mr. Durrell, I wish to summarize the steps that have been taken by staff to bring this report to you today. In 2022, York Region retained ACKNOWLEDGEMENT Insurance Group to examine the risk financing alternatives because of concerns about rising insurance premiums. So with York Region leading that initiative, an insurance pool working group comprised of all 9 local municipalities in York Region and with York Region was established to evaluate the feasibility of a joint insurance pooling structure to stabilize costs and reduce premiums. We have been at the table with York Region and these municipal partners since 2023, participating in a number of working group sessions to shape this structure. Staff have worked through the phases of this file from the initial investigative insurance pool working group stages to the detailed implementation planning, which Mr. Durrell can provide you with more details on that. During this planning of the operational administrative setup, we have finally reached the point to bring our collective thoughts so that council will have enough information at this point in time to decide if it wishes to make the decision to join into a pooling arrangement as we have recommended in the report. Having said that, I'd like to clarify that we are not asking or seeking council's same-day ratification, so that no decision is being asked of council today. This is a lot of information to digest. The report is quite a hefty beast, and that is why it's necessary for Mr. Durrell to walk us through this and answer any more questions that the town has with respect to the pooling arrangement, keeping in mind that the administrative part of this exercise led by staff have had a lot of touch points with ACKNOWLEDGEMENT, have asked a lot of questions, and there has been a lot of analysis done to get us to this point in time. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Durrell to you.
Thanks very much. I will endeavor to make insurance fun today as best I can. It starts with this snazzy origami slide. Next slide, please. So business case was done over multiple years and multiple reassessments over time and again, time and time again. showed us the same thing, that there's meaningful savings to be had to the municipalities in and around York Region. Ultimately, it leads to about a 20% savings over the overall insurance costs of the participants, inclusive of the deductible. So if you were just looking at your insurance premium, which most people focus on, it's actually more than that on the insurance premium, but over your total costs of risk. This is accomplished by leveraging self-insurance. All municipalities participate in some form of self-insurance. We call it a deductible. We're just saying let's do more of that and save some money. So next slide, please. This won't be the first insurance pool formed in Ontario. Back in 1998, my predecessors formed the Waterloo Region Pool, then subsequently the Durham Region Pool in 2000. Both of them are still up and running and continue to be quite happy with the results. Just last year, we assisted the Simcoe County municipalities in forming their pool. It was 18 municipalities, 18 meetings just like this one. It was a lot of travel. But up and running, and in fact, they have thus far, and I don't think I'm oversharing, exceeded the savings as presented. So positive results there. And now I'm standing in front of you regarding a potential York Region municipalities insurance pool. Established question mark, but we're hoping that's July 1st, with the sign-on being in a month or so. Next slide. So what is this whole pooling thing all about? I'm going to give you a great analogy. Pooling, and which is essentially self-insurance, is essentially like making food at home, right? Making meals at home has a lower cost. It utilizes in-house skills that are available. And insurance is very much like going to the restaurant. You pay a premium, which is why they call it a premium. You pay a premium for the convenience and the specialty and some of the services that you can outsource by buying insurance. But by show of hands, how many people eat every meal at a restaurant? Seeing none, I would conclude that making meals at home is generally preferable for at least some of the time, and we go out for restaurant meals less of the time. So that's essentially the idea of self-insurance. Next slide. The pool structure essentially retains the municipality's existing deductibles, so each municipality is a slightly different size and complexion and retains risk today, and we're not looking to change that. Each municipality will continue to pay a part of their risk independently. For example, the region has a significantly larger deductible than East Gwillimbury, and that will remain, and they will continue to pay out of pocket for that. The pool then provides a layer on top of that of self-insurance or risk sharing that is not traditional insurance, but we're by no means saying let's not buy insurance at all. It still provides significant value in insuring those very large claims. You know, anything above 500,000 would continue to be insured the way it is today, but we're going to pool together to provide more cost savings by expanding that deductible layer with the pool. Next slide. The coverages are quite comprehensive, but they don't cover everything that every municipality currently purchases. There's a few things, for example, cyber, which we don't have enough data on today to say this is a great idea to retain that risk. It's a little bit too risky, if you ask us, and the premiums are not so high that it's something that we need to offload. But the vast majority of your premiums are being encapsulated under the coverages being provided, and that includes your municipal liability, property, equipment breakdown, crime, and automobile insurance, amongst others. The other thing pools can do is create group purchasing programs for their members to save additional costs on the things that aren't in the pool without increasing risk. Next slide. Selection under deductible under the pool is quite important because we want to make sure that each municipality, based on size, uses the pool the same way. So at the core of everything we do is fairness across the municipalities that are members. And so we've standardized the deductibles. Fun fact, East Gwillimbury is the one that doesn't have deductibles changing. Everybody else has to deal with changing deductibles. So we don't need to address it here. Your deductibles were obviously perfect, so we've kept them the way they are. Next slide. Status quo versus the proposal. I think this really highlights where we can find savings. As it sits now, based on the actuarial results of the analyses, plural, carried out over the last few years, approximately 16 cents of every insurance premium dollar that goes out the door across the group of municipalities goes to pay actual claims. The rest of the 84 cents is going to insure administrative expenses, broker commissions, operating expenses, marketing budgets, et cetera. And then there's a significant chunk of that, about 49% estimated, which is profit and risk margin. And what we're saying is we want to take some of that and retain it within the municipalities. So after we put the pool into place, we're shrinking the overall spend, which is delivering you a savings, and we're just readjusting that a little bit so that 30 cents on the dollar is going to go pay claims, and 34 cents is for costs and expenses, and 36% will be for profit and risk margin. Profit being the insurers, because we're still going to use them, and risk margin, which would be surplus for the municipalities, is something that we get to keep as the pool. Notice I say we, I feel like I'm amongst you, so next slide. See, it's fun, right? This is fun insurance stuff. Pool levy detail. So this is just to give you a sense of whereas this is all the municipalities looking to participate combined. So the municipalities within their various deductibles are currently spending about $6.5 million a year on an expected basis under their deductibles, and sending $14 million off to insurance companies for the rest of the risk. And we're going to change that. Some of the deductibles are lowering, so the under-deductible component is going to shrink, and the total cost, the replacement for the insurance premium, which is now going to be called a levy under the pool, is $10.6 million, 10.7, sorry, and the savings of $4.3 million, that's yours to keep. That's just not being charged. That's just at the startup, because we are planning to build in security for the municipalities to make sure that we have more than enough to cover the claims. But we don't have to do that forever. Estimate is about 3 years, and then we can reduce that. So running through some of the expenses that are contemplated within the levy, $1.7 million is what's expected to be spent above the deductible. $474,000 is the risk margin allocated by the actuaries, essentially a buffer in case things go a little less optimal. $1.4 million is operating expenses, which includes staff for the pool. It's a net new process and net new people, so we're not pushing things. I think in your reading you might see that the York Region has been allocated to be the host, but their staff are not running the pool. It'll be separate staff, and including things like claims management software, risk management efforts, et cetera. And $6.2 million is earmarked to purchase that excess insurance we talked about, so it's still going to be insured, and $900,000 will be an additional surplus contribution to build up a war chest in case claims get really bad. So in the future, however, about 3 years from now, if all goes according to plan, the $900,000 contribution will no longer be required, and savings will expand from 21% to 25%. So things will get even better down the road. Next slide. Allocations are important. How do we know which municipality pays how much? What we've decided to do to make sure that everybody achieves a savings starting at the beginning is to use the expiring premiums as the baseline for expenses in the door to allocate those premiums. Whether or not the insurance marketplace has got it perfect, I don't know, but at least everybody will achieve the same or commensurate savings overall, adjusted for deductible. But in time, we want to move to something equitable on a cost-plus basis to make sure that each municipality is paying for their fair share of losses. It shouldn't be terribly much different, and we've looked at the analysis, and no municipality is overusing the pool relative to the others. But what will be great will be the level of transparency the municipalities get about how their premiums are assessed and how they're built up. So rather than the black box of the insurance marketplace, it'll be very transparent for those municipalities who are participating. Next slide. This slide does not translate very well to this forum. It's very, very tiny. Hopefully you have a better version. The real highlight here is the savings on the far end of the chart, which shows your sort of overall 5-year accumulated savings. We assume over time exposures, the number of buildings, the number of vehicles, the number of population are going to grow, so we have accounted for inflation. Also, severe weather events are becoming more and more frequent. We're not blind to the fact that that's going to keep happening, so inflation is baked into these numbers, but after 5-year savings for East Gwillimbury tallies up to an estimated $1.04 million. So $1 million in savings, but in addition, East Gwillimbury retains some of the surplus contribution I talked about in previous slides. Essentially, the profit is surplus, and that becomes, it is the equity of the municipalities, and East Gwillimbury shares, it's a very small number, I think 260,000. So overall savings, if you were to include that component, would be about 1.3 million. Overall, it's expected to save in excess of $20 million across the entire group. So, next slide. The thing is held together by a subscribers agreement. This is what creates the association or the pool. It involves a 5-year initial commitment, and you might think, why 5 years? Happy to tell you. First of all, you won't be able to see the full breadth of savings if you don't stay in long enough. So we want to get past that 3-year mark when you can start expanding your savings to 25%, so that when you come around to make the decision as to whether to stay in or not at the 5-year mark, you're doing so experiencing the full breadth of savings and services. Secondarily, it gives us the clout to negotiate with the insurance marketplace for the excess. We just did this with Simcoe counties. It was very effective. They achieved more savings than the budgeted number. I can't promise that'll be the case here, but it's imperative that we have that clout to say, we're banding together, we're doing this together, and you're either with us or you're not when we go to the insurance marketplace. The advisory board of the insurance pool sets the levies annually. Each municipality will have a seat and a vote regardless of size. So same vote for each municipality regardless of size. And they will ultimately be approving the levies and the allocations. So again, transparency and involvement in the setting of those new premiums or levies. The pool manager will be responsible for the day-to-day operations. We are not adding any burden to the staff beyond participation at the advisory board. And possibly getting involved in exciting new risk management activities, but it should involve no net new staff for the municipalities participating. And the agreement lays out entry and exit conditions. So if another municipality knocks on the door and says, hey, I really wanted to be in at the beginning and I decided not to be in, now I want to come in, it's the advisory board that says whether or not they can, but also lays out what their costs will be, what the bar is set to enter. So to give you a good example, the Waterloo pool was formed 27 years ago. Lots of people have come knocking. 0% have been let in because they like it the way it is. So the advisory board is the ultimate decision maker on entry and exit. But there's also exit conditions if somebody needs to leave for whatever reason. It lays out what that process is after the 5 years. Next slide. Operations is net new, but it is covered by the levies, so it's baked into what used to be your insurance premium. Currently, the municipalities pay insurance premiums, and brokers and insurers are performing these tasks. We're taking some of those funds and building your own dedicated team just for the municipalities in York Region to service you on things like contract reviews and risk management, not that we can't continue to tap into insurer resources as well. Essentially, risk management as it takes place now in the municipalities will be as it is now, but access to a new layer of risk management resources if desired. So we're not looking to change processes for anybody. It will be business as usual, and then ultimately will evolve to be better than it is today as we build out resources. Next slide. This is a pretty snazzy-do chart to say how we're going to get to launch, which is the rocket ship at July 1st. It's going to be very busy, assuming it goes forward and we have your support, but we're looking to sign the subscribers agreement. It says March 31st. It may tip over that a little bit as we wait for councils to make their final decisions. Nevertheless, lots of things are being put in place already to make sure that we can meet those deadlines, including excess insurance negotiations. We've started talking to the markets and warming them up to the idea this is coming down the pipeline. Advisory board meetings will start essentially the day after we think we will get the last yay or nay on the, I think, the 22nd of April. And yeah, it's all green lights through to July 1st, assuming everybody's in. After launch, continuous improvements are imperative. You'll see that the pool continues to do new things and find new ways to save municipalities money by grouping together and pooling resources. And that's even as quickly as a year for the Simcoe County being the experience. They've saved considerable money over and above what they already thought they were saving within the pool. That's the last slide. Hopefully it was, better than you thought it was going to be.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? You have a question?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Durrell, through you, Madam Mayor, to our presenter. This is a really interesting concept, and I read it with quite with a great deal of interest when we had this brief. I know there are from my years of experience in insurance, I'm a recovering insurance guy. I know there are two things that insurance companies fear, and they are the types of claims. They're catastrophic and their frequencies. So you described if we have a catastrophic loss, if it's in excess of $500K, we parcel that out to excess insurance. So
Correct.
That's looked after. That's a good thing. How do you handle frequencies? What's the approach there?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Crone. Frequency is very modelable. We have significant claims data across the whole group. It's also consistent with claims data that we have across the industry. It's not as much of a mystery as you might think, and the actuarial modeling counts for the variability of claims over time. So given that we've seen significant snowfall, snowstorms, which create motor vehicle accidents, slips and falls, etc., we have some semblance of how bad things can get. And if we were to dial back, which we don't need to do, the risk margin is accounting for making sure that we have enough funds based on the levies to capture essentially, one in 9 times out of 10, and that last excess piece isn't terribly much more significant on frequency, and essentially the modeling does not show that we will be caught flat-footed by claims volume. In theory, it's possible that we could have 2 or 3 times the claims, but we've already accounted for a significant increase in the pricing modeling that we've done, just as insurance companies do. The other thing we might achieve as we go through the excess is some stop loss. It's an insurance term, stop loss protections, especially on the property side where we might see this, see that kind of frequency exposure coming from significant weather events, where it might say we are capped at this many claims before the insurance will take over all of the claims under the pool retention. So there's a variety of protections in play, but most of it is just purely crunching the numbers, the historical data, and having seen some of the worst and planning for that in our pricing.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, I have a couple more questions. Good answer, I like that. I know from my own experience in managing both agents and brokers that you can have in side-by-side marketplaces, you can have very different claims experiences. And so I'm just curious, what has been your experience? You've had 28 years now since you launched your first pool. What have you run into a situation where you have one municipality that might be just bang on with the risk management, and maybe a neighboring municipality that is just a total disaster and risk, management. And so how does that give the rest of the members of the pool license to start critiquing how that one municipality is managing their risks? I'm wondering what are the political dynamics of that?
Great question, and I'm delighted to answer it. So first and foremost, if your claims frequency goes up because you're not doing the risk management you should do, then your levy goes up and you will just pay for it. So it's going to come out of your pocket as the municipality is not doing it. The wonderful thing in my experience working with insurance pools and other self-insurance vehicles is nobody wants to be that municipality. Nobody wants to look bad amongst their peers as they sit around the table on the advisory board. So there's a degree of self-policing that happens in making sure that you're adhering to the policies and procedures set out by the advisory board, that you are a good Samaritan amongst your peers, and it actually elevates. All boats rise with the tide. All municipalities tend to just exceed and achieve excellence by learning from each other. But there's also a degree of some municipalities just have different risks, whether their roads are, windier, or whether they have waterfront versus not waterfront, and they have different risks. So we can't say simply because their claims are worse that municipality is necessarily worse at risk management. They may just inherently be a riskier place. And that is generally captured in the insurance premiums and the pool levies as established. But we'll be watching for it and looking to set out, these are the best practices to make sure that all municipalities know, what's the bar? What are we trying to achieve? And I think what's really exciting is how the community of municipalities within a pool get together and trying to achieve excellence together. And nobody wants to be the standout saying, oh, I just don't bother with risk management. It just simply doesn't happen.
Okay. Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, I just have two more questions, and I'll hand the microphone over to someone else. I'm curious. Actuaries are the engine of any insurance company. How, in your 28 years of operation, how would you characterize the evolution of your actuarial modeling?
Oh, certainly the data that comes from having that experience over time. When we first set up the first pool, as I understand it, I know I look like I'm old enough, but I wasn't. I was only a student at the time. But my predecessors told me that, the data wasn't as good as it is today. As municipalities have moved to better and better claims management systems, they're tracking data much clearer, and we have a longer tail of history upon which to base our analysis. So it's getting more and more accurate and more predictable. One of the really cool things to see as you look back on a 28-year pool is just how effectively they've zeroed out for the piece that's retained. They've zeroed out I'm going to call it fat, it's probably not a great term, but the excess premiums and costs and so on of insurance by basically pricing it at not-for-profit levels. So there's no profit, there's no excess, we're not under, we're not over, we're pricing it perfectly. So speaking to the actuaries have enough data to be incredibly accurate as they set the pricing of the levies to make sure that municipalities are paying no more or no less than they need to in order to get the job done. And that creates stability for the municipalities over time. And when it comes budget time and you know what your number is coming down the pipeline, that's pretty sweet.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, I appreciate the answer. I always used to argue with company actuaries because I always thought they over-reserved us too much. So doing it just right sounds good to me. The last question, always curious about the exit. And, if you're in this for a few years, at least 5 years, and there's equity built up in the pool, if a municipality decides to leave for whatever reason, are they entitled to a share of that surplus if they want to leave?
Purposely why we included it in the chart, because it is your surplus, and if a municipality chooses to leave after 5 years, it may take a few years before all of that will come back because we still have claims developing. Some of the claims where somebody slips and falls, we don't know the nature of the injuries. It takes time for that to develop, but those funds will come back in time and come back to the individual municipalities, and the pool will maintain a subscriber's essentially subscribers' accounts so that the municipalities can track how much of the equity is theirs. So it's all being tracked with transparency. Unlike a regulated insurance entity, it's not beholden, and Municipality Act has a carve-out for municipalities to allow us to do this uniquely, which is quite cool. Unlike a regulated insurance entity where that might take 15 or 20 years, an insurance pool is not beholden to FSRA, which is the regulator for insurance companies in Ontario, and therefore that surplus can come back a little bit more quickly than if you were, say, stuck in a regulated insurance entity. But I can also tell you that if you don't pay claims and you have surplus, getting some of your money back from the insurance company because they didn't pay as much claims just doesn't really happen all that often, and this is pretty cool. So it's a positive, a net positive. It might take a little longer than everybody would love it to be next day, but it does come back to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We also have some other people asking questions as well this afternoon.
Fabulous.
Councillor Leahy, and Councillor Foster, and Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Mayor. I have a few questions as well. This is very complex, and insurance companies they make money. So we need to ask some very careful questions about all of this process. So you mentioned in your presentation that the pool that was established by Kitchener-Waterloo back in 1998, that they have subsequently had others with pools who want to join, and so, but the advisory board did not allow those pools to join. So who gets to participate on the advisory board, and is there some structure to that? So if we agree to come on with this insurance pool, would we be given a position on the advisory boards?
Yes. Each municipality has a representative on the advisory board.
Mm-hmm.
Each one has one representative, possibly an alternate, and each municipality has one vote on matters affecting the pool, regardless of size. So it's not like the region, for example, has 6 and East Gwillimbury has 1. It's 1 for each, regardless of size. And
Good.
every municipality is represented, and their voice is important.
Okay, with one voting advisory board member.
Correct.
Okay, that's important to understand. Thank you very much. And so you are suggesting that it's an initial term of 2 years from July 1st, 2026, but we are being asked to stay in it for 5 years. So what happens at that 2-year mark in terms of what if the projections and everything goes up? And then when we're asked in 2 years if we want to continue for another 3 years. So what's the process there?
The only thing that's 2 years is we've been asked to help launch the pool and be the administrators out of the gate. It is something that our firm does for other entities, and then we can hand over the reins to dedicated staff once the budgeting and so on can be done. That's the only thing that's 2 years. Somebody will be running the pool regardless, whether it's York Region staff or so on, seconded to the pool, not necessarily their staff. I don't want to raise the impression that the York Region will be running the pool, but it's case in point in the Kitchener-Waterloo pool, in the Waterloo Region pool, Kitchener is the host. Kitchener staff technically are the pool managers, but they are seconded to the pool and they answer to the advisory board. So they don't answer to Kitchener other than for policies and procedures and employment practices. So the only thing that's on 2 years is me. So I better do a darn good job if I want to stick around, or hand it off to whomever you decide to bring in to run the pool in our stead. So.
Thank you very much.
no.
That's an important point for everyone to understand,
course,
and I
yes.
appreciate that clarification. And one last question for clarification is, you mentioned the number of $500,000 deductible
Yes.
for us in East Gwillimbury.
No, that's
No?
the pool's deductible. East Gwillimbury maintains its existing deductibles, which I think are in the $10,000 to $25,000 range. The pool will then take anything above that up to $500,000 before the insurer takes over carriage of the claim. So the pool, that shared layer above what the municipality is doing, is the pooled risk. So that's shared amongst the participants, just the way it is currently shared via insurance. You just don't have any oversight over it. So when you have a claim, if you were to have a very large claim, it might impact your policy, but ultimately, and this is Insurance 101, the premiums of the many pay for the losses of the few. So you are currently actively engaged in pooling. You're just doing it on a commercial basis with an insurer that doesn't give you the details of how that sharing is happening. Great case in point. I love storytelling, so if you'll indulge me, for example, there's a large transit loss in Ottawa. That had ripple effects across the entire municipal space. So you're not immune to a municipality, even across the province, having a large claim and impacting auto rates across all of the municipalities, whether or not you have transit.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you. Councillor, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. So a couple of my questions have been answered, so I'm kind of thinking on the fly here.
Great.
Hopefully you can help me out.
Me too.
I want to go back to, I think where Councillor Crone was kind of going one time, when we talk about a possible out clause. So we're looking at a 5-year commitment, and let's say that for some reason this does not work for East Gwillimbury, or we are that municipality that Councillor Crone was talking about, and I don't expect we will be, but is there an out clause in that first 5 years, or are you in? And at what point would the advisory board look at a municipality and go, these guys have to leave?
Great question. I mean, I think the reality is that the advisory board can decide to dissolve the pool if they choose to do so. If it's really not working and nobody can get along, you can all agree to end the lease early and you go your separate ways and find new roommates. But that's how you could end it early within the 5 years. I think part of what makes this work is it is a, three musketeers. Everybody works together. If there is a problem, just as in good insurance companies and insurance policies and brokers, if there's a problem, you work to solve it. You don't just say, oh, you're not good enough, get out. And that's one of the nice things about an insurance pool and, reciprocals and other self-insurance, is you then actually have every other member saying, how can we help? It's not a, you're a bad actor, you should get out. It's a, something's not working, let's fix it together. And it's that camaraderie that actually makes these kinds of entities work really, really well.
Councillor Roity Clemente, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I too had a lot of questions. This was a rather meaty report. I guess I wanted to kind of touch on the idea of different risk profiles. So you mentioned in your story about a transit loss. The lower tier municipalities don't operate transit. So we have a different risk profile than that of York Region. We operate swimming pools and community centers and libraries, and they operate transit and ambulances and things like that. So our risk profile is very different. Our book of business is different. How is that accounted for in this process?
First of all, the premiums are very different, depending on the risk. Also, they have a significantly different, because of their sheer size, they have a different retention. So their retention will be, as per the report, $250,000, not $25,000. So they are on the hook for more of their losses. It's priced appropriately for the risk. So if, swimming pools are the riskier, I like to give this example. If one municipality decides they are going to be Canada's foremost skateboard park mecca, they're not known to be particularly great for claims, they're going to pay more for it. So it's adjusted for in their premiums and their levies. Secondarily, the reality is that if we're talking about risk profiles being different, just like in staffing and community, diversity is actually a plus. So running transit might be totally different, but it attracts a fairly significant premium. That premium gives us clout, but also they don't necessarily have claims at the same time that swimming pools do. And so that diversity actually helps us smooth out the bumps, because we don't usually have bad things happen in every single quadrant at the same time. And insurance companies do this very effectively. Like, part of what helps us is that we are going to diversify across property, liability, and auto, is that none of them, not all of them are going to go bad at the same time, but also across different types of risks. buses are different from cars and so on. They handle the snow differently, and so that diversity is actually a benefit. If you were running an insurance company and you were what we call a monoline insurance company, and all you did was property, then you would have to have significantly more capital, because if property goes bad, it's going to go really bad. You actually get a credit on how much capital you need to have if you're running multiple lines. So we're actually using that to our advantage, and it's a benefit for us to have diverse risks like the regions versus the independent municipalities.
Thank you. So I guess for me, when I looked at it, I saw that the region's deductible drops from $1 million to $250,000. So they're benefiting dramatically from this pool, whereas our deductibles aren't changing at all. Are we not just underwriting the region getting cheaper insurance?
I'm really glad you asked that question, because if anybody else was thinking it, it bears answering. They're paying more. They're not getting the upfront levy savings that the other municipalities are. So if you look in the second to last chart here, you'll see that there's actually a significant adjustment for their deductible going down. So they don't see the premium savings, they see this, they actually have a surcharge for the fact that their deductible is coming down. The reason why that deductible comes down, part of why, and I can't say I understand exactly the decision to go to $1 million retention, but if you're a singular municipality, to try and achieve the savings that pools can do, you have to do something extreme, like have $1 million retention, in order for insurance companies to give you a reasonable discount. And so that's probably why they did that. It's not terribly necessary, since the modeling shows only 1 or 2 claims a year will be in excess of $500,000, and maybe a handful will be above $250,000. So it's not a lot of claims, there's just a lot of volatility, and we're offloading that to the insurance company, and they're paying for the benefit of the reduction by not getting the same upfront savings.
Okay, if I may, Madam Mayor, I had one
Go
more
ahead.
question. I did send 11 to staff ahead of time, so I think reducing it to 3, I'm doing okay. The report notes that specialty insurance will still be required by the municipalities. It gave the example of cybersecurity insurance. The need for that specialized insurance, doesn't that negate some of the savings that we're going to be achieving through this process?
Those premiums are unlikely to change at all with or without the pool. So cyber would be a separate premium. You're still going to buy it. It's from a different underwriter. Depending on which broker you're with, I could probably guess which market you're with. But they're totally different insurance markets, and your premium won't change because you've joined the pool. And if it does, you'll call us and we'll set it straight.
So shouldn't, given that all of the members of the pool need cybersecurity insurance, shouldn't that also be part of our coverages rather than simply I think it's 3 or 4 lines that you're
I don't believe all
underwriting?
municipalities purchase cyber insurance. I would tend to agree with you as a risk person that every municipality should have it, but not all of them do, and not all of them can get the terms and conditions that the others can, because they may not be in the same place on their risk journey around securing their cyber environments. So given large claims like we've seen in Hamilton and Stratford and so on, we think it's just not something that the pool should never necessarily take in as a risk. That said, other municipalities have grouped together to purchase insurance. For example, the Waterloo pool moved in 2021 to use some of their surplus, the money that they built up, to self-insure cyber insurance. So they don't even purchase it in the regular market. They group together and they do it themselves. So I'm very much an advocate. We should do that in time, but rather than complicate this process by trying to pull coverage in that maybe not every municipality is buying the same way or can get. Give you a great example, municipalities with budgets over $1 billion sometimes struggle to get cyber insurance. And if they do, it's typically with an egregiously large deductible because, and I've talked to underwriters in London about this very thing because we do a lot of it for universities, for example. They just don't like municipality risk. And that's unfortunate. We need to change that narrative, but this is just one that if you're currently purchasing it, you'll purchase it the same way through the same broker, and it's not a cost savings change for you on the pooling.
Okay, because we did, I mean, as, the N6 did have a quasi pool, I guess, if you, I mean, it wasn't
Right.
structured as a pool, but it was joint purchasing. And we were working together and going to market as a group of 6 municipalities rather than just to ourselves, so. Anyway, I'll let,
We're big fans of that in Waterloo, where we're also still the insurance brokers for them. We group purchase, for example, environmental coverage. They get more limits and better coverage for significantly less than what they're getting through their predecessor program. Big fans of it, and the pool can facilitate that, and the advisory board can decide which things should we focus on, which things are going to give us good value, which things are all our members interested in. So that's when I say there's more savings to be had once we get together around the table as an advisory board and pool.
thank you.
No problem.
Councillor Crothers? No? Councillor Johns, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and through you, and I think this might be a joint question to both the presenter and to Mr. Marshall. I'm just trying to get a better sense around, because we use the term savings and we continue to say savings. And I think for most residents, when you hear savings, you are thinking about cost reductions. But you did indicate the term premium and shifted that nomenclature into a pool levy. And so when we're actually talking about the cost savings or the potential to realize those cost savings, it's actually sitting in the pool of the equity. I believe that I'm correct on that. And so if I'm wrong, please correct me. But if that is the case, that it is sitting in the shareholder equity, is it not really a balance sheet item as opposed to a cost, a cash flow perspective in savings? So I guess really what I'm coming down to is we keep saying savings, but it's really a balance sheet equity position of increasing that we don't ever really realize versus the actual cost savings. And to that end, it's not like we can do this deal and then go out to our taxpayers or ratepayers and say, hey, we saved 0.25% of your taxes or 0.5%. Can you clarify that this is a balance sheet improvement versus an actual cost savings on cash flow?
Yes, through your mayor. Yes, actually, it is actually both. It is a cash flow savings of approximately 21% of actual cash savings versus the status quo. And also, in addition to that, there's a balance sheet item that builds over time for the municipality. So it'll be, assuming things come out as projected, roughly a 21% savings, real cash savings, less outflow of dollars from the municipality, money that you can spend on food security, for example. But also, in addition to that, a build of equity within the pool. So it's savings plus equity. So it's both.
And thank you. And so through you, Madam Mayor, to whoever is best qualified to answer, when we're talking about the 20% and we're looking at the pool levy of $506,000, are we talking about $100,000 a year that we are saving on our premium costs per year?
Correct. Yes.
Thank you very
I think
much.
it's more than 100,000, but yes. And then also equity being built, plus.
Wonderful. So we're saving $100,000 a year in real dollars from the operating standpoint, and then on the balance sheet, it's really somewhere between 50 to 70,000 in equity being built for the balance sheet.
Exactly, yes. And to use the insurance term, it's pretty sweet. It sounds almost too good to be true, but trust me, we've run the numbers about 1,000 times. It does
We
work.
have an insurance salesman on council and Councillor Crone, and we have an insurance salesman in you, and I'll tell you, you are both sweet with your words, so wonderful, it's appreciated. Thank you.
It doesn't have to be boring just because it's insurance.
Thank you. Thank you,
Cheers.
Madam Mayor.
Thanks for the question.
Thank you very much. Not seeing any other questions. I have a resolution here. Be it resolved that Legal and Legislative Services Presentation and Report LLS 20826202604 dated March 24th, 2026, entitled York Region Municipalities Insurance Pool Program be received, and that the General Manager of Legal and Legislative Services be authorized to execute any documents necessary to give effect to the town's participation in the insurance pool, including the subscriber's agreement, subject to the satisfaction of the town solicitor, that council endorse. I'm not sure how to say it, so AXXIMA Insurance Services to be retained by the Regional Municipality of York, York Region, for an initial term of 2 years from July 1st, 2026, or such later date as confirmed by York Region, to provide insurance pool host services in respect of the York Region Municipalities Insurance Pool, and that the treasurer or appropriate designate be authorized to represent the town as a member of the Municipal Insurance Pool Advisory Board.
Happy to move.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Crone. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are now at item I, Finance, with Councillor Johns in the chair, please.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. So this item under Finance, item I1, it's a finance presentation and report for the unaudited 2025 year-end financial position. So I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Marshall to guide us through.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of committee. We're here to provide an overview of the town's unaudited financial position for 2025. I'm here with Val Ledema, the Director of Finance and Deputy Treasurer, and Carolyn Brown, the Director of Capital and Development Finance, and they'll be going through an overview of the operating and capital results for 2025. Then it'll get passed to me to go over the proposed allocation of the 2025 surplus. So with that, I'm going to pass the presentation on to Ms. Ledema to go through the operating results.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Good afternoon, members of committee, Madam Mayor. Can we go to the next slide, please? I can't see. Now I can't see your faces. So you can see on this slide, surpluses exist where revenues and planned contributions to reserves exceed the expenses and planned draws. The results show a surplus here in the tax and rate-supported programs. In the case of the fee-supported areas, the expenses were greater than the revenues for the year, but the fee-supported program resulted in an overall draw from reserve, however, about half of what we had anticipated through the budget process. I will go through these details on the upcoming slides. Next slide. In the tax-supported operating area of the town, there are items that have contributed to the surplus and some that reduce the surplus. Further details are provided in the accompanying staff report to this presentation, but I will summarize some of those areas here. First, we will review the areas that have increased the surplus. An increase in tax revenue over the budgeted levy is mainly related to payment in lieu properties, reassessments, and adjustments in the amount of approximately $600,000. Other revenue that exceeded budget expectations were late payment penalties, account change fees, and general receivable interest. With a current increased focus on collection, as well as the return of the tax sale process on overdue property tax accounts, this amount is expected to reduce in future years. It's important to note here that on average, about 85% of all tax accounts are paid on time annually. The net savings related to salaries and benefits in 2025 is approximately $800,000. In 2025, surplus premium rebates were received relating to WSIB for both the years of 2023 and 2024. These are unpredictable in nature and cannot be budgeted for, but they did result in net savings for the corporate-wide benefit costs of the amount of about $250,000. The balance of the $550,000 relates to net savings from staff vacancies and delayed hiring in various departments across the town. Overall savings from the library operations amounts to approximately $134,000. These savings are a combination of staff vacancies, variance in some costs, and some additional unbudgeted grant revenue. A surplus amount of $238,000 was realized from the waste management program and winter maintenance programs combined. These programs did experience increased costs. However, the higher costs were offset by unbudgeted grant and one-time revenue. Approximately $180,000 in savings was related to an underspend in training and development programs across many departments in the town. These savings are not expected to continue as they are related to a combination of staff vacancies combined with timing of training availability and planned delays in training. Approximately $371,000 relates to various program-related savings across the town, including property and building maintenance, public works and road operations, and some utility savings. The final category that contributes to the surplus for 2025 is an increase in both user fees and grant revenue. The user fees are greater than the anticipated budgeted amounts, mainly relate to ice rentals, and grant revenue is a combination of unanticipated grants received across a few different departments. Next slide. While we do have many areas that have contributed to the surplus position, we also experience areas that reduce that surplus. These include higher costs or lower revenues than anticipated during the budget process. Our street lighting program, as an example, costs are over budget here by approximately $309,000. These areas relate to increased contracted services and increasing hydro costs. An additional $308,000 over the budgeted estimates was incurred for specialized external expertise, including the costs for the Integrity Commissioner, external legal advice, and specialized consultants across many departments. Various program costs required to provide the municipal services above the budgeted amounts total about $281,000. These include increased banking fees, increased mailing costs, equipment repair, insurance costs, and increased materials and supplies. Finally, some revenue areas that result in lower than the budgeted targets are about $135,000 and mainly relate to lower bylaw fines, reduced minor variance permits, and decreased motor vehicle accident recoveries. Sometimes a good news story. These amounts all reduce the surplus by just over $1 million, ending in an overall surplus to the tax-supported budget of $2.4 million. These amounts are contributed back to the reserve, and the allocation of this surplus will be discussed at the end of the presentation. Next slide. In our rate-supported water and wastewater operations, there is a surplus of about $1.3 million. Approximately $750,000 of this is directly related to water usage. This is a result of increased revenue offset by the cost of water supply and wastewater treatment. Consumption volumes are estimated during the budget process by analyzing both town data and region data, and projections are provided. In 2025, an additional 360,000 cubic meters of water was billed from those budgeted projections. This increased consumption, combined with a higher number of new accounts and reduced water flushing, all contribute to the budget surplus here. During 2025, the water operations team also experienced some unplanned staff vacancies, as well as some hiring delays. This resulted in savings related to salaries and benefits of approximately $396,000. Drinking water permits and new water connections, which are often unpredictable and difficult to forecast, resulted in about $235,000 of additional revenue. Throughout the water and wastewater program, there were some cost savings totaling about $8,000, but offset by some increased mailing costs of about $33,000. All of these areas combined make up the surplus of about $1.3 million, and that will be contributed directly back into the water infrastructure reserves. Next slide, please. Within our fee-supported area, we saw some increased site plan applications that resulted in higher revenues than anticipated in our planning, engineering, and park development areas. Building permit revenues resulted in lower revenues than anticipated. All areas combined saw revenue approximately $900,000 above the budgeted targets. Costs were slightly less than budgeted by about $220,000 across all areas. This is mainly a result of provision for contract staffing that was not required in the building branch due to lower volumes. Each of these areas are fully funded by their associated fees. In years of slower activity, the reserves are drawn upon to fund the excess operating expenses of the areas, and during periods of higher activity, these excess revenues are returned back to the respective reserve accounts. With that, I can pause for any questions regarding any of the operating programs before we flip to the capital highlights.
Thanks, Ms. Adema. Any members of committee have questions, comments for what we've gone through so far? Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Chair. So my first question is with regard to the slide that you showed about cost savings of $371,000 for providing municipal services. But then the next slide, we saw that it said that there was a additional cost to provide various municipal services of $281,000. So how can we have a savings cost surplus in providing those municipal services in one slide, but then in another slide where we had additional costs that take us down by $281,000?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The cost savings areas come from a few different categories, so they're different types of expenses. Making some of the categories would be property and building maintenance, public works, utilities, equipment and vehicle, mileage. So we saw some cost savings or some costs coming in under budget in those specific areas. For the flip side of it, we had expense areas that had costs over the budgeted amount, so increased costs. Those areas would be some increased advertising costs, bank fees, payroll costs, courier and mail processing, equipment repair. Those types of expenses came in higher than budgeted.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is snow removal included in that? Because it's been snowing since November of 2025. We started early this year. Is an increase in the amount of snow that we received this year affecting that at all in terms of the additional cost to provide municipal services?
Through you, Mr. Chair, winter maintenance was listed separately, and it was on the cost savings slide. We did have increased costs of about $250,000. However, we did have some one-time revenue and grant funding of $378,000, resulting in that program coming in under budget of about $112,000.
Okay. Through you,
Thank you.
Madam.
Yeah, go ahead.
Through you, Mr.
Do you
Chair,
have one
yes.
more question? Yeah, go ahead.
I have another question with regard to the water infrastructure surpluses, which you said would go back directly into the water infrastructure reserve. So the user fees provided an increased revenue of $750,000. So is there any consideration that perhaps the users, who are the residents and taxpayers, that we will not have an increase in next year's budget because we have an increased user fee revenue of $750,000? So I know that many in the community would like to see their water bills go down, but we have a $750,000 surplus increase in the revenue, so.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do review the consumption projections over a long term both through town data only and through York Region data. So York Region's looking at it at a much wider array than we are. Our projections for the 2025 budget were in line with those projections. However, the consumption came in much higher. That's a result of a few different things. We had a very hot summer, higher water usage. We have big properties throughout the town that are watering their grass. That doesn't always happen. We can't see into the crystal ball, so we use the data that we have to create the projections and base the budget on that. We also use our water and wastewater financial plan that takes into account what our historical consumption is, what the projections are, what the growth projections are, and what our rates should be. So our rates have been in line with that, and this contribution to the surplus will bring those asset management targets closer to where the financial plan says we need to be.
I see. So thank you very much for that clarification. But the bottom line is that all of the funds, the $1.356 million, will all go directly to the reserves, and it won't necessarily translate into maintaining the same water fees in the next budget for users or a decrease. It won't have any impact to give some relief to the water users.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we will take into account what the levels of the reserve balances are and what they need to be according to the financial plan whenever we're looking at the 2026 or 2027 budget. The rates are set based on what the requirements need to be. So at this point, it doesn't look like we'll have such an excess in the reserves to allow for deviating from that rate plan, but we do review that rate plan every 4 years.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ms. Adema, I too kind of raised my eyebrows a little bit at the 1.3 million in water. I guess my question, it's a similar question, but I'm going to phrase it differently. We have the water rate study that recommended certain rates based on asset management and what we needed to save in order to maintain the water infrastructure that we have, as well as the rates for consumption. So between our surplus and the budgeted contribution to reserves, are we still under what the rate study forecasted?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are still slightly under, and we're working towards that. The benefit is our water infrastructure is younger than many other municipalities, so we do have the benefit of a little bit of time to make sure that we catch up.
So we're still not contributing at the same rate as the rate study has suggested that we should. So
Correct.
Even with this surplus going into reserves, we're still not meeting that expectation. Thank you.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. I know that when we were in our budget deliberations, there's a lot of concerns about the draw on reserves, that we were taking too much out of reserves, we were depleting our reserves. So I just wanted to comment that it's good to see that we're in a position to help boost those up again and get them back where they need to be. I know that staff err on the side of surplus. Like you said, you can't predict that it's going to be a warm summer and everyone's going to be using more water. And I think it's important that we do err on the side of surplus as much as we would like it to be exactly balanced. If it's going to be one way or the other, better a surplus than a deficit. And I'm wondering if you can just tell us what would happen if we'd budgeted differently, if there hadn't been a warm summer, et cetera, and we had ended up in a deficit position. What happens with that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have the reserves available to help us offset that cost. So no different than the development and fee-related reserves. The development activity goes up and down. So in years where the revenue is high, we deposit those excess into the reserves savings account. Whenever the expenses are high and the revenue's low, we withdraw from that savings account to help us bolster as we move forward. So we would have to do that in the event that we did hit a deficit. We do have some reserves to help us. We do monitor the financial activity throughout the course of the year. So it's not going to come as a surprise at year end if we're going to hit a deficit position. So we would be planning for that. We would come to council. We would give you an update as to where things are at and what we may have to look at doing.
So in comparison to previous years, is the $2 million a surprise? Or is it higher than normal, or is this what we are typically looking at?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the 2.4 on the tax-supported side, that is coming down from what we've seen in previous years. Our supplementary tax revenue actually came in lower than what our budgeted projections were, so that came in at about $60,000. We know we have a few things on the radar that are coming in that will bolster a little bit of the tax revenue, but we're really trying to keep that budget where it needs to be. So not an excess, but not operating with our feet cut off.
Exactly. Good. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
I see, thank you, Councillor Crothers. I see Councillor Leahy has her hand up, but I just wanted to go to, is there any other members of committee before going back to Councillor Leahy? Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Ms. Adema. I'm approaching this similar to my colleague, Councillor Carruthers. I'm of two minds. I have mixed emotions about what the figures we've seen so far. I'm glad that we have a surplus, much better than a deficit, but I am a little frustrated that we have such a big surplus, because did that mean that we took more of a tax rate increase than we ought to have? And I know planning is, you mentioned your crystal ball, mine doesn't work either. So, I looked at two of the drivers. One was greater revenues than we expected. The other one was, I think it was around 800,000 in staffing, delayed hiring of staffing. And I think we have this conversation every budget time where we allocate money for staff, but we almost have to allocate, well, not almost, we do have to allocate for the entire year of that position, even though we know that we may not necessarily hire them for the entire year. So I'm a little, and I don't even know why I'm asking this or commenting, but I hope you understand the frustration that I'm having, that, we have to go back to the public and say, yeah, hey, great, we're handing back more surplus, and we're investing it back in, and it's going to do good things. But, when everyone's, right now, they're struggling. And so I'm just wondering, what can we do to be better? You never want to be at zero. You want to get as close as you can to zero. What can we do better to make sure that we're a little closer to hitting the mark that we should? And I fully accept that a surplus is better than a deficit, but I'd really like to get closer to zero. But welcome any comments you might have.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can offer you a couple of things that we do through the budget process that maybe helps us be better every year. When we develop budgets with the departments early in the year, we are looking at actuals back for the last 5 years. So we take a look at what the budgeted numbers were down to the detailed account level. We take a look at what the actuals have been, and we talk to the departments about what caused those variances. So what did they budget? What did they spend? Was there an increase in costs? Was there a decrease in costs? And is that expected to continue? We also have within the budget targeted cost reductions, where they go through that finite analysis of looking line by line, and then we still find an additional $360,000 of savings across the town. We can't control, and we don't want to control, when we get more money. So when we get unanticipated grants, we welcome that. We also welcome when the fire department doesn't have to go and do motor vehicle accident recoveries and we have less revenue than anticipated. That's looking out for the safety of our community. So there's many different things at play. Supplementary tax revenue is a very difficult one to estimate. MPAC has a window of 3 years to bring things onto the tax roll after completion, and we can't always forecast exactly when that's going to come in the exact budget year. So in the case of 2025, we budgeted higher than what we brought in, but we did have some reassessments that made up the difference in that. The other thing that fed into the surplus for 2025 is a WSIB rebate that we got for 2 separate years, all received in 1 year. We don't know when they're going to make those plans, so we welcome that additional funding.
Great. Any other members of committee before Councillor Leahy? Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just kind of build a little bit on Councillor Crone's thoughts there. I'm sure staff understands we get the phone calls all the time with some pretty fabulous ideas on what we should be doing with extra money that's left over rather than putting it in reserves. And I've got a number of them written down here, but I'm not going to throw them out today. So we've had this conversation before, and I know it's an issue. And not necessarily a question for you, but how do we make this information more readable to the general public so they understand the last few lines that you used as examples for Councillor Crone are the perfect things that our residents don't think of unless it's thrown out to them. So how do we do a better job to make the public aware of the wrestling that we do at budget time versus now when we're looking at a little bit of money left over? I'm not sure, again, it's unfair to ask you that question, but I think we just need to do a better job somehow, and I don't know exactly how that is. I'll leave it at that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, what I can tell you, I can't tell you how to not speak as an accountant because it's in my blood. But what I can tell you is we do publish an annual financial report. And in front of the financial statements that can be read and understood very easily by an accountant is about an equal number of pages that explain that information in a resident-friendly format. So we do talk about what happened in the municipality for the year, what caused things to increase our revenue, what caused our costs to go up, and what caused some things to go down. Maybe one thing we can do is build a little bit more into that and talk about where the reserve contributions are coming from.
Thank you, and I guess it just needs to be very readable for the general public. And what hit me was when you said about having a refund from WSIB for 2 years. I know I would never think of that as an answer to a question. I don't know if anyone else on the desk here would either, but those are the types of things that I think the public needs to see.
Great, thank you. So Councillor Leahy, back to you, and then I will just call out that there still is the rest of the presentation to go through, but Councillor Leahy, over to you.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Chair. So I had 2 questions. One is with regard to the revenue going down in bylaws. We hired a new bylaw staff member, and so I'm wondering if that person has been hired, and when we will start seeing perhaps possibly an increase in the revenue from bylaw fines. And my second question is with regard to building and the Development Services Department. Our revenues were 1.278 million and our expenses were 2.731 million. So I recall just over a year ago, in early spring of 2025, we had a growth management presentation and our CAO, and it was discussed in fairly great depth about what is happening with the revenues in the building department, because I'm very concerned about those revenues going down so significantly. We were told at the time that at least for the next 2 years, that revenues are anticipated to be lower than we would like because of the development market as it is right now. But what can we be doing to increase the revenues in the building department? And because I'm very concerned that there's a $1.441 million discrepancy between the revenues and expenses in that department.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will first defer to General Manager Gandhi to talk to the bylaw, and then I will help out with the development services question for building.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the parking officer was hired in October, and so we have definitely seen an increase. So the full year isn't perhaps captured, but certainly the last quarter will be reflected in that. Plus, we had a 2025 municipal law enforcement officer position approved, and we are in the process of hiring for that position as well. And so that the interviews are actually this week. So we hope to have a positive answer for you shortly, and then that individual will also contribute to parking enforcement. Thank you.
So I can start off with the building question, and then I will pass it over. The development and fee supported does happen in a development cycle. You do see in 2025 increased revenue greater than expected from planning, engineering, and park development. So that's all at the site plan stage. Once that comes to fruition, it will move into the building permit stage, and we will see the building permits issued. So we do expect that we'll see that flow through, but perhaps General Manager can add to that.
Thank you. Through the chair, quite simply, the market isn't there right now for development, so we've seen a significant decrease, as every other municipality has experienced in terms of building. To respond to that, though, in part, because we can't make people come in to get a building permit, but what we can do is manage our resources. So currently, we had a vacancy that became available earlier this year. We've not advanced filling that vacancy at this point in time because our building activity is down. Having said that, should building activity increase, we will move very quickly to try to fill that position because we want to see applications come in, we want to see development happen, and we want to see the requisite both tax that we do benefit from, but also the DCs.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So, Ms. Adema, I know that there's still more of the presentation, so I'll turn it back to you to kind of lead the next steps on the presentation.
There is. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will pass it now to Ms. Brown to go over capital highlights.
Good afternoon. It's a very brief update from myself. Throughout 2025, the town made some good progress on our important council-approved capital projects, with $39.6 million spent, 69% of which was related to the Health and Active Living Plaza. The town also invested significantly in the revitalization of our downtown areas and the rehabilitation of critical bridge infrastructure. We were able to close 85 projects. At the end of 2025, there were 102 open capital projects with a combined value of $58.5 million. And this doesn't include, of course, the projects that were approved through the 2026 budget. I'd just like to point out that while $12.1 million of the HELP budget remains unspent, as noted on the screen, it's expected that significant savings will be realized and the full budget likely will not be required. And then we have some, as you know, significant ongoing investments in the downtown revitalization initiatives and in the maintenance of our critical infrastructure assets. that's it for capital. So maybe I'll pass it along to Mr. Marshall, and then we can take questions at the end.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Marshall.
Correction, I'm going to pause for questions.
Okay, we're happy to, I'm glad
Apologies.
you're happy to field questions from the team as well. So
I am.
to our committee, any questions for Ms. Brown? Looks like you're switching it over to Mr. Marshall. There you go, Mr. Marshall.
Thank you.
Thanks. So you've had an overview of the operating surpluses and how they were generated. And the next task is to assign those surpluses to the reserves. And in the past few years, we've taken the following approach to allocate those surpluses to reserves based on these 4 objectives. The first is to allocate the surpluses from the rate and fee programs to the respective reserves. Then we take a look at the tax-supported reserves and top them up, top the ones up that are looking like they'll be in a deficit position or have some significant reductions in those reserves. We also contribute to asset management reserves based on the asset management plan requirements. And then finally, we will allocate reserves based on objectives as determined by council. So for 2025, we've used these same objectives to propose an allocation to the surplus. Next slide, please. So on the tax levy surplus, we've recommended that the majority of the tax-supported operating surplus go to topping up reserves that are forecasted to have a negative balance or will have decreased significantly in the near term. The proposed contributions would bring the forecasted uncommitted balances to a positive position. So the only 2 exceptions to this methodology are one relating to the library reserves. So on the operating reserve side, council has approved a policy that allows the library to use part of their operating surplus to top up their operating reserve up to an amount equal to 7% of their net operating budget. So in 2025, EPGL used funds from the operating reserve that were not anticipated in their 2025 budget. So we're proposing to use $27,000 out of their $134,000 surplus to go towards topping up that operating reserve. On the asset management side of the library reserves, the 2025 asset management plan and our 10-year capital plan show that the reserve will be sufficient to meet the requirements over the 10-year period. However, in 2026, we're looking at the commitments that are proposed in 2026, and the balance in the reserve would be reduced by about $50,000 in 2026 based on those commitments. So we've proposed to allocate an additional $50,000 from their operating surplus to top up that reserve, so it would offset the impact of the 2026 commitments. The other exception to our methodology was with the working capital or tax stabilization reserve. When we went through and did our allocations of surplus, there was $18,000 remaining, and we decided to allocate it to the tax stabilization reserve, as there's a planned draw of about $107,000 coming out of that reserve, and there's no dedicated budget contribution to that, so we put that $18,000 to that. Next slide, please. So program surpluses or required draws in the fee-supported programs are applied to their related program reserves. So based on the proposed allocation, all reserves would be in a positive balance except for the parks development fees. So although this reserve is negative, The balance only changed by $120 in 2025 and has remained at approximately this level for the past couple of years. And we're expecting that the reserve will be sufficient to fund the program over the longer term. Next slide, please. And finally, this was discussed a bit earlier, but the water and wastewater surplus will be allocated to their asset management reserves. So combined with the budgeted allocation, contribution to asset management reserves, $3.8 million will be allocated to the asset management reserves in 2025. The proposed allocation to reserves in the former water and wastewater rate study was $4 million, so it's a little bit less. But as you recall, in 2025, the council approved an update to the water and wastewater rate study, and that study showed that annual contributions need to be increased to $9 million by 2035 to meet asset management planning needs. So with that, I will pause and take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. So members of committee, questions for Mr. Marshall? Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Chair. I'd like more information on the parks development fees. And if you could go into a little bit more detail about explaining that and the differences between the amounts in the columns. I took a screenshot of it just to saying the unaudited year-end balance is $488,243 and the proposed allocation is $20,000. But could you go into a little bit of further depth about the parks development fees?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure what depth you'd like me to go to, but I can explain that as development applications go through, the Parks Development Group will have fees charged to coordinate and look at the building of parks within subdivisions. So that happens later on in the process. And right now, we've seen that there's been a bit of a lag in those fees because it's further along in the process. So we're anticipating that later, as these applications go through, we will be collecting the park development fees and replenish the reserve.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Any other questions from committee for Mr. Marshall? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Marshall.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, that's the end of our presentation, and I think we just have the report to deal with. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. So given that we've had the presentation, there is a motion that is sitting on our agenda for I-1. And it's be it resolved that finance presentation and report 2026-02 dated March 24th, 2026, entitled Unaudited 2025 Year-End Financial Position be received, and that subject to the final 2025 audit report, council endorse in principle the allocation of the year-end operating surplus as outlined in Appendix A. So I would need a mover for this. Councillor Leahy. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. Wonderful. Mr. Marshall, thank you very much to you and your team for all the work in this. Do you have anything else for committee under finance?
Through you, Mr. Chair, nothing at this time.
Wonderful. Does committee have anything else for Mr. Marshall and his team? Seeing none, Madam Mayor, I will switch it over to you, and I will just note for the agenda, I need to take a few minutes, and then I'll be back, but looking forward to rejoining.
Thank you very much. We are at Corporate Services with Councillor Carruthers in the chair, and that's item J.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have one report before us today, and that's the Municipal Weed Inspector Appointment Bylaw. The conclusion of the report says that the proposed updates are housekeeping amendments to ensure the bylaw enforcement staff have the authority to enforce the Weed Control Act. And I'll turn this over to General Manager Gandhi to take us through this.
Through you, Madam Chair. So the Corporate Services report is seeking Council's approval to appoint the bylaw enforcement staff as municipal weed inspectors to ensure East Gwillimbury maintains compliance with the Weed Control Act. The appointment provides authority required for staff to carry out inspections, issue orders, and take corrective action where necessary. The appointment bylaw was enacted in 2018, and this amendment is required due to staff changes. So purely administrative. We're seeking ratification at tonight's council meeting so that the names can be reported to the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness prior to the April 1st, 2026 deadline.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much. I'm also happy to move it if you'd like me to.
Thank you.
My question is with regard to, for clarification that we need a weed person. So I understand that. I'd just like clarification that we do not have to hire any new staff to fulfill the requirements of the weed inspector position, but that it will be, the job duties will be taken care of by already existing staff members. Is that correct?
Ms. Gandhi?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is correct. These duties would be fulfilled by our current staff complement.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, it's moved by Councillor Leahy. All in favor? And that's carried. I'll turn the chair back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We are on item K at this point. Development Services with Councillor Roy DeClemente in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have two items on our prepared agenda for today. The first one is a planning branch report regarding an extension of draft plan approval for Queensville Phase 9, which has 3 addresses on Second Concession. So it's over at Second Concession and Doan Road. As Ms. Vounvakis, would you like to present this report, please?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This report seeking Council's approval for an extension of a draft plan approval to October of 2029. This is the first requested extension. The lands are located on the east side of Second Concession, north of Doan Road in the community of Queensville. Similar to other similar requests that committee has dealt with in the past, the extension is requested given current market conditions. However, I'd like to point out that nothing would preclude the applicant from proceeding with pursuing completion of the draft plan within the time frame. So the 3 years is providing them that with that extension, but they could complete it within that time frame. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I neglected to ask for a mover. May I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Crone. Any questions for Ms. Vounvakis? Seeing none, may I have, I'll take the vote now. All those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you. Second item on our agenda is a planning branch report regarding a zoning bylaw amendment application for 20337 Leslie Street, which was applied for by Alexander Planning, Inc. May I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Carruthers. Thank you. Ms. Vounvakis, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Most of you may recall this application. It was before you in February of this year. And quite simply, this application is seeking to regularize what currently exists. So it's seeking some changes to the zoning bylaw to recognize the existing setbacks. It conforms with the town's official plan. It conforms with regional official plan and all provincial policies. We're recommending that the application be approved. I can point out to you that we have also received the site plan application, which is important to ensure that we can make sure some of the other issues that have been raised through our circulation are addressed. There has been nobody that spoke at the time of the statutory public meeting, nor have we received any comments in opposition or in support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, I have a motion as presented, moved by Councillor Carruthers. All those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you very much. That's the end of our prepared agenda. Do you have anything further to add?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. No, I don't.
Okay, thank you very much. You're keeping your powder dry for this evening. I'll turn the chair back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. There's nothing listed on the agenda under items L through O. We will move to item P, which is other business.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm just confirming that for the workshop topics that are planned for the April 14th workshop, there are 3 items identified for that date. I will just read out the topics. The first one is York Region Police presentation. The second one will be the 2026 Asset Management Workshop. And the final item, which is the third one, is the Financial Condition Assessment Workshop. So 3 items for the upcoming workshop planned for April 14th.
Thank you. Do we have any? We are at item Q at this point. Be it resolved that the meeting of Committee of the Whole adjourn at 4:05 p.m.
Happy to move.
Thank you very much. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, staff. Really appreciate the amount of time that's been put into this. It really shows. Thank you.